This will go viral, you know, like the 6 people will watch this within 4 weeks.
Hopefully that worked okay. Hello, Ian.
Hi, Marvin. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm getting the hang of this thing. So, yeah, it's proving interesting and very, very rewarding and getting a lot of interesting answers. But I will put a disclaimer out there for all those who don't know that not only have I had the pleasure of playing many of your pieces of music, I've had you in the same hall where you've premiered a very special piece of music that you very kindly gave us for the visit of Ipswich Signal Band to Woodbridge for a very special concert, Woodbridge Celebration. And
yeah,
it's still well remembered. And
well,
if anyone wants
it's a pleasure to write it.
It is on YouTube.
It was a challenge, that was. So many tunes in so little time. But it was fun.
Marvellous. So, hello, how are you? You're fine? So,
yeah, I'm very good.
Right back to the beginning and ask, the very first question I like to ask is, when did you find out that this musical ability to compose outside of the piano, outside of your house, that other people could play and were like, hey, this guy can put music together?
I don't know, some would argue I still haven't found that talent. But no, when obviously, growing up in the Salvation Army, then obviously I went in the singing company, White Pit Band. So music, my mum was a pianist, my dad and my whole family were musicians. So music's been a very big part of my entire life. When I was in my teens, my sister was the singing company leader, and I had a dabble writing a couple of 2 or 3 singing company songs. Looking back now, they were awful, but the tune was okay, but the rest of it wasn't great. But it only went as far as them using it, and it was okay for their purposes, written by hand on manuscripts. And that was kind of it, really. And then when I, let's just say, probably, I was very late to composing by other people's standards, but when I was in my 30s, I went to the Gospel Arts Festival, 2001 it was, and I was sitting there and enjoyed it. The Melbourne Staff Band played a piece called Exaltation, and it was written by our very own bandmaster, Andrew Mackworth. Andrew was a bandsman at the corps. He was on trombone then, and still is at the corps, bandmaster now. But he was a man that had been playing within a band I knew very well. I didn't realise actually he wrote music in any way, shape or form. And that kind of inspired me. I thought, let sort of give me the inspiration really to rekindle my love of music and actually writing it rather than just playing it and singing it. And that really was a click point for me. And so from that point forward, I had a little chat with Andrew. He lent me a copy of Sibelius and let me have a dabble with it. And from that point forward, I've sort of started to compose really. And that's really how it all started.
So when you start a composition, does it depend on the composition itself? Are you piano, manuscript, paper, or is there a natural evolution?
Yeah, it depends really on what I'm writing and how I write it. But if I have the time and the dedication and the, discipline, what I try to do is to actually write down the piece from start to finish, not note-wise, but to explain what the introduction will be, what's going to happen at A, what's going to happen at B, what's going to happen at C. So it gives me the chance to actually think through a piece from start to finish before I've written a note, really. So the concept of the piece and what I've tried to do, it may not actually map out that way, but that's the idea. Now, to know this works was my very first published band piece, Reasons Why. That was the first time I'd ever applied that technique, and it worked out very well. So that's kind of the ideal for me, but I can't lie and say I don't sometimes just write pieces straight onto Sibelius. And if I show you here, I've got Sibelius behind me. if I show you around, there we go. There it is on the screen.
Ooh.
All right, I'm using my laptop. And then my piano's here.
Very nice.
There you go. So it's computer piano. You can fiddle around with that and I can work out the chordings and stuff that way. So it depends on timing and if I've got the time to do it. And yes, how disciplined I am as to whether or not I do plan it all out or I, write direct. It's a bit of a mixture really, but that's kind of my two main ways of doing it.
It also depends on whether it's a commission or whether it's something that's come to your own brain and wants to come.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't get that many commissions, so I kind of operate under the radar. And you've been very good, and I've had a few from South Korea. But generally, I tend to write stuff that I want to write, which in a way is good. But it's also not great when you're sort of struggling for ideas. That you have writer's block, and if you've got a commission, you kind of know what type of piece they want, how big it's going to be, what tunes they tend to want, and so it gives you something to go at from the start. But yeah, it just depends really on the music I'm doing and what I'm been asked to do or what I am.
I mean, you've got a lot of Unity series stuff. I mean, it all comes down to the evolution of your writing, I would guess. But is this just a case of you started off writing small and got to the General series and Triumph series because that's just how it came out and then it got published?
No, I mean, I think there's a big mistake with new composers, but it tends to be they tend to want to write big straight away, and I was no different. So my first pieces were all General series and loads of parts. And through experience and through hard work and making lots of mistakes, I kind of realised that actually Unity series is a fantastic way to start. And my advice now, if anybody comes to me, is start with Unity series, get your 5 parts sorted out, get your basic harmonies, your basic chording right, and then through the Triumph and General, you can embellish it. But again, when you're asking how I write something, even for a General series piece, I'd still generally do the 5 parts to get a basic piece, and then let's say you add it and embellish it. I struggle really with General now because Triumph I'm okay with, but to go from Triumph to add the extra cornet part in, to add the extra horn part in, it's kind of a challenge, but it's a good challenge to have. But so what I try to do with music, you probably see I'm not one for. I've written some big pieces, but they don't tend to get used, and it takes me an awful long time to write music. So I tend to focus now on writing functional music, i.e. music which core bands will be able to use. So largely Unity or Triumph series really. And that's probably why more of my pieces have been Unity, because I've largely written for my own band, first and foremost, and we tend to play now Unity series most. However, saying that, my first 2 pieces were both General series, so that kind of
11 reasons why
contradicts what I've just said to an extent. But that was just, but I had been through the General series, none of it published, and started writing the other stuff, and then they just worked very well, I must say.
I remember playing Bound for Glory and Great Big God, and they were so inventive, and they took some interesting tunes that were really established beforehand, and you just sort of gave them a new twist. And Bound for Glory, it's got a wonderful journey through the colour palette, if you like. Yeah,
I mean, that goes from, it had a very catchy, what's the word, I don't know, theme going through it. And then it goes to major to minor, back to major again, which is good. So if you're going to use the same tune over and over again, you've got to look at different ways to utilise it, so the listener still wants to keep listening. And it's always good when you write something to get a theme, so I'm quite, not lazy, but if I get a theme, I do stick to it. And you'll hear it coming throughout my music. So
how important is originality to you? I mean, you talk about the differences between getting an established tune and also your own internal compositional.
Yeah, I think that the hard part is when you've got a tune that's established, especially older music, which is wonderful. But a lot of more able composers than me may also have used them in the past. So if you're going to use them, you do have to make it, you've got to, for me, stick to what the essence of the song was. So I don't tend to take a slow meditative song and make it fast, or the other way. The other way around I can do, because it's quite nice to do that. But generally, if it's a meditative song, then just keep it in that meditative frame, really. And really, yeah, be aware of what else is out there that's used these songs before, and then do your best, really. But yeah, you've got to try and use it in a way that is unique to yourself, but still lends itself to the song you're doing. Doesn't alter it in any way, or doesn't make it sound I don't know, awful. I tend to write by ear, so a lot of my stuff, most of my stuff is very tuneful. Some very, very good composers can write stuff that to me sounds awful, but I know it's technically brilliant. But most of my stuff tends to be easy on the ear, I think it's fair to say. That's because of how I write. I have no technical training in composing. It's all self-taught. I couldn't tell you any of the chords of any of my pieces whatsoever. Other people can tell you this chord I used. It's really working through it. And that's why it takes me a long time, because I make mistakes still and I have to sort of iron them out. But, I've learned a few tricks to do that. But generally, everything is what I like to listen to. And then I like to listen to melodic, tuneful music, really.
Can you remember the first time that you actually heard a piece of your music, published music, being played?
Yeah. I'm trying to think what was it based on? It was on an old prayer chorus. It'll come to me at some point during the thing. I've got a full list of everything that I've been published with. But it was a piece, and then Andrew just played it through for me, and then he realised there's a big difference between how Sibelius sounds and how reality sounds, especially when you've written. Sibelius plays everything perfectly, which is great. Bandsmen don't. And the balance is always perfect. Sibelius, real bands. When you want to play a piece and you find that no baritones have turned up and they've only got one cornet or something like that, it can change the whole concept of the piece as well. So it's things like that. So it was an experience. I didn't get put off by it. However, what I did write wasn't great. So let's put it that way. But it was nice to hear it. It was nice that someone was prepared to support me and to put it before, because if you don't do that, you'll never get it played. And you've got to be prepared, though, to take on board what you're listening to. If it sounds rubbish, it's rubbish, basically. And there's, I made all the basic mistakes of early days writing. Writing general series, everything, not giving any instruments a rest, not looking at how the balance of the chords spreads across the score and things like that. It's little things like that which can sound fine on Sibelius, but in reality sounds awful.
What would you consider a successful one of your pieces? It getting recorded, a favourite band, actually performing it in a festival? Is there an answer to that question?
Success for me is any band that chooses to use it, really. That's it. Whether it's, I used to get hung up about it being published, or bigger bands playing my stuff. No, I've had some big bands play my stuff, so that happened. But it wasn't. I think early days, you think, to be composer, I want to be this. And you look at the people who've gone before you, and you go to the gospel arts festivals, and you have the big music playing. Oh, this would be great to do that. And it is great to have that done. It's really lovely, to be fair. But now I'm not so hung up about publication, because I understand now more about the publication process, the amount of music they receive, and so now it's always been a privilege to be published, but now knowing the vast amount that they get given weekly, it's absolute privilege to be published now. And if I don't, then so be it. But there are other mechanisms nowadays. It's a lot easier to share your music as well. And when you get to copyright, I tend to utilize things that the army has already published in some way, shape or form. So when I get other bands to play it, it's not really, hopefully not an issue. I try not to be anyway.
I'll leave him anonymous because he will know his question. You're a songster leader, but well known for band pieces. Do you write for both genres, and do you have a preference?
Yeah, there's my little list. I've got, what's my vocals? Here's my vocal sheet. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 vocal pieces been published, which is fine. But as I said, I'm no pianist, and I find me writing for vocal, you've got to have a very good piano part. So it's always a struggle to me to write for piano. That's because I don't play the piano, and therefore it's it's a bit of a strange one that a songster leader writes a lot of band music. But I've been a bandsman, I've been a brass player far longer than I ever was a songster leader. What I do find though is that by being a songster leader, there's so many wonderful tunes. I tend to use Sing to the Lord, the Army's own publication, 95% of my music. Some songsters don't use it at all, and that is a massive, massive waste of resource they're not looking at, because you're going to get 7 songs, you're not going to like all of them, but I find the quality of songs throughout that publication for songsters absolutely brilliant. And it's our bread and butter really going forward. So I'm a big supporter of that. But then when you get to sing the songs off, little twig in my head, that would be nice to do a brass arrangement of that as well. Mm-hmm. And that's how I get a lot of my ideas, because I'm a songster leader, because I like the songster piece so much. Then I go for it, and then I can utilize it. And so if I let's have a look at the pieces that have gone. And this is not just to list out the stuff, but reasons why I did that, because We Are the Reason was a wonderful songster piece. Reasons Why by John Martin is a wonderful songster piece. So why not put the two together in a band piece? We Saw Love, we sang that as the songsters, and I really loved it. And then it ties in with How I Love Him as well, which is a pair of chorus that goes with that. Nothing But Thy Blood. Again, songsters were singing it. I loved it. Let's do a brass arrangement. So you can see a bit of a thing going here that it registers with me, and I'll just make a note, and at some point in the future, it'll be good to use that.
I mean, there's an interview online. I think Albert Jakeway was quoted as saying that he was in the music editorial department, and he found a songster piece, and he made it into a cornet duet.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, I felt it would be very good to use it in that medium. So, another question that came in, I didn't know this. Your brother also writes great music. Is there any rivalry, even if it's humoured?
There might be my nephew Mark, who does write. No, there's absolutely no rivalry whatsoever. Mark actually vets some. Mark has gone the right way. He studied composition at university, so he sometimes vets my music to make sure it's technically okay before he does it. And similarly, he'll send things through to me for comment as well. So no, it's very much, and it's the same. There's no I don't see any rivalry with anybody else who writes music. We just want rooting for everybody. It's great that we look at the people who've gone before us, and our generation now is tasked with still producing very high quality Salvation Army music, which is traditionally what we've always been good at. So it's a big responsibility. So you don't really want anyone else to fail, or you're not rivals in that sense. It's always looking out for, like, when you write music, you get to know an awful lot of composers as well, and looking out for their new music and trying it out, and just rooting for them really. And it's great when they have whatever a success is. And it's great to be able to play their music as well. But yeah, my brother has just had a singing piece about to be published, so there will be 3 Feltwells published very soon. So there you go. It's in the blood.
Nothing but my blood. I mean, I'm looking at your list. There's a good selection of different genres there. Is there a happy medium of a genre? I mean, is it something you feel really comfortable, or is it a case of, wow, somebody's thought of me, I'll have a crack at it?
Yeah, I think if you look at it, if you analyse it in any great detail, the sort of the bigger stuff, Triumph and above, it tends to be meditative pieces, which is my favourite thing to do. I've done other stuff because it's fun to do other stuff. Excuse me. But really, I mean, one of the reasons I write music for the army, so it's not exactly a financial thing you do it for, is because personally in my Christian life, I've always struggled one-to-one to talk about my faith. I can talk in bigger groups, I can give my testimony, that sort of thing. But if I saw an individual and say, do you know Jesus? Do you want to talk about it? Or if they're struggling, offering to pray, that I've always struggled with that. So one of the reasons I write music is to be able to do that, but through music, and it puts it out there. So it's a wonderful thing to know that people can listen to your music and maybe get closer to God before it becomes saved because of it. And that is a phenomenal, privilege again that we have. And so I feel that whilst I am limited in my personal discussions, my music is out there and it's there, and it's part of this legacy of Salvation Army music. If it gets published, it can be used anywhere by anybody at any time. And the messages you get back, or you'll get messages on Facebook where someone's playing the music or a photograph of moaning about that particular part or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's great. And I've had, you get music. Reasons Why was my first published piece, and Melbourne staff band picked up on it and played it and they recorded it on a Fiesta album. So that was a really very humbling, really, because I've had one piece published, it's gone on, and the staff band recorded it, and now it's it's part of their repertoire and stuff. And that was, and I had some comments back from people who I'm now friends with in Australia because they heard it, and that's you can't quite get your head around that, really. It's just like it's just very humbling. And we have composers' days occasionally, and one of the very first ones I went to, Peter Graham spoke to me and said, make sure everything is as good as it can be, because once it's published, you can't make any changes and it will take on a life of its own. And that definitely does happen. And there are things I've heard that maybe I would change now, but luckily not many people spot them. But it does take on a life of its own. And so the visual question was, what kind of music do I like to write? And I waffled a bit, but meditative for that reason, so that I can get the message across in the music. And so the two for me that stand out would be Nothing But Our Blood and We Sort of Love, really are the two that for me are my, and Reasons Why as well. Those three, are my favourites in terms of what I've written and what I tried to do and how I've ended up. And there you go. So that's good.
A question that I do like to ask is, bearing in mind that you've got this heritage of Salvation Army upbringing and a musical background, so when you get the idea or you get commissioned to do a solo or an arrangement of a very well-known hymn tune, how do you keep it original? So bearing in mind we're constantly bombarded, we're listening to music and all the rest of it, how does the Feltwell cope with making a decent stab at it without falling into being an RSA, Macareth, Blythe piece?
Is that a collaboration I don't know about? To be fair, I said earlier, I don't get asked to do that many, and I think if I am asked,
it will change now. You'll be bombarded.
Yeah, you're right. But I think if you're asked to do like a selection or something like that, you can have multiple songs in there. So one won't stand out against another one. And I think, as I said before, as long as you're aware of what's gone on before, then hopefully you won't duplicate it or sound like you're copying something. Which, there's only sort of 7 notes in the scale, really. And sometimes things can sound similar to other things, and that's just the way it is, isn't it? It's amazing, really, the permutations you get from so few notes. And so I think it's just awareness of what's out there, but try and do your own thing. But I'd always have a good go at it, but I'd also be prepared to say no as well if you think there's something out there that you're just not going to be able to compete against.
Have you ever had a piece of music that tried to get away from you and you had to sort of stop tinkering with it and say, right, I'm not going to meddle anymore with that because it could spoil it, and to let it out?
Yeah, it's hard to give an example, but as you know, I draw as well, and again, when do you know when to finish a picture or a painting and that sort of thing? And it is hard. It's a tough one, really. I don't really know. There's no right or wrong answer on that one. I don't really have any examples where I've maybe gone too much. I tend to I'll get 90% there, and then I'll think, I can get the ending done tonight, and it takes me about 10 minutes. When really the rest of the pieces are all the thoughts. So my biggest issue is taking the same discipline to finish off a piece that I've done at the start, in the middle, and towards the end as well. So I don't think I've really had that issue where I've maybe done too much. My problem is maybe not doing enough. But there's also, never be afraid when you write music. It's have a network of people that know what they're talking about as well. So I have, there's various people I can send my music to who can look at it and give me advice and
I was going to
suggestions.
ask who your mentors were, who sort of help, gives you the help and the jump when you get stuck. I mean, who would be on the email to say, look, this isn't, can we chat about it?
Yeah, there are several, and I'm fortunate enough to play in Salvation Brass, and there's many composers in there, so I'm not excluding them, even though I'm not about to mention any of them. But obviously, Andrew Mackworth is key. He came, he's the one that put the seed in my head to become a composer. I think he lives a mile away. He's my bandmaster. He's my friend. So I'm free at any time to just run anything past him. And he's what he's good at. May not seem it at the time, is being actually just very honest. So if you think something isn't good, he'll tell me, or he'll give me, suggest something. And I think why I've come on so much, Andrew's never gone to the point of giving me the solution. He'll say, well, maybe you could do that another way, but let me get on with doing it another way so I can learn that way. And that's been useful. I suppose because he's got a teaching background, that's useful. But then through my connections with, with the music ministries unit, Ken Downey has been absolutely superb as well. I go down and have meetings with him, and he'll go through my music, and he's a phenomenal musician. He'll look at a band piece, like E flat, B flat parts, and then play them in concert pitches on the piano, and it's how his mind works is unbelievable. So to get someone like that looking at your work and critiquing it is brilliant. And everything he says, I pretty much hang on every word he says, and he's been superb in that sense. Andrew Blythe as well for the vocal side as well, been really good. So I'd say there are lots of others, and but they are three that probably stand out that've been on my journey from the start really to where I am now.
Interesting you said. So as you're still learning, and it's a evolving process, but are there any sort of benchmarks in your composing career that you've, the biggest lessons that you've learned in your music writing experience, things that stand out and sort of, wow, that, was really a big help and a big leap to get over?
Not really. I think some of the general things. It's just the rules about that you have to learn. And Ken Downey very early on one of my states said it's all right breaking musical rules as long as you know you've broken them and why you've broken them. Whereas early days I was breaking them left, right, and centre. So, for example, this is a bit I don't get too technical, but if you put a bass note in a third of a chord, you shouldn't have it anywhere else in the chord. And I had it all over the shop. Cornets, horns, trombones, bass, all playing a third of a chord. And it doesn't sound very good, really. It's weak is the word I've been given if you do that. So little things like that. So
all the composers watching this will just have a sharp intake of breath and laugh.
Laugh because he is trying to get technical, which he's not very good at.
I'm not technical at all. This is part of the love of doing this, is I can see a non-entity. Band geek asking a favourite composer about their pieces and how they got written. So we've played through Kids Alive, which is a lovely collection of Doug Hawley music. Is it Doug's?
Doug's, yeah.
How did it take to be written?
How long did you say?
How did it come to be written?
Well, yeah, if you notice the title, that's because Justin Reeves, who is the editor of Kids Alive, had a chat with me once and said he would look, when he does his meetings, when he goes around and talks to children, he uses a lot of Doug Hawley songs. And so he said, would it be possible for me to just do a selection of Doug Hawley songs? And I wasn't overly familiar with his work. I know a few, some of them are very famous.
You know some of the big hitters, yeah. Yeah,
but I agreed with Justin that I would do it. Therefore, the title was sorted straight away because it's Kids Alive, named after the magazine. And I knew what I was going to have to do. So what I then was sat through iTunes and everything with Doug Hawley. I was writing down every song. If I liked it, write it down. Is it meditation? Is it a fast one? That sort of. And I got it down to about 10 songs in the end. And I realised early on, I'm not just going to have a selection with 3 songs. There's going to have to be more than that. The end product was about 6.5 minutes long, which I know for Unity series is very long. So I thank MMU for allowing it to be published. But I went with 6 in the end. And what I did was agreed with with Justin, because he asked for the piece, which of these we would go for. So it was kind of an agreement, and then the order they would go in, and then it was down to me to obviously arrange them and make them flow into each other. And that was really lovely as well. I mean, the slower pieces in that are absolutely lovely, and I'm so glad of that, because I've got to learn a bit more of Doug Hawley's music because of it. But yeah, the challenge is making it from the very well-known singable songs that everybody knows. So, and it's for children, so it's going to be obviously I'm looking for YP bands to play it to a younger audience as well. So they're very familiar with all the songs that are going on. They know them more than I did. So you've got to be basically, you can't suddenly change dramatically how they're done. So really the key was to make them, how you get it to start and flow into the next one almost seamlessly, really. And that was fun. And it seemed to work quite well. So I was quite happy with the end result of that.
Oh, great. It's a really jolly piece to play and to listen to. I mean, Great Big God's the same, a really interesting chorus and a lovely arrangement of that. And it's not sort of overblown, and, you know, you kept it concise and made the tune the central part. Yeah,
and again, it's how do you make something different. So for me, that was the solos that were in it. Ended up being counter melodies of the main tune, so it worked quite well. And it made everybody do a bit of clapping in the middle of it as well. So that was slightly different to how it went. But again, it's still Great Big God as a piece, and it doesn't change in any way particularly. When you hear the solos, with basically the same backing that you get for Great Big for the main tune, and then when you go to the end, those solos come in again as a secondary melody to the main one. So again, it worked quite well. It didn't take too long to do either. So, and that was down to Justin as well, because Justin, it was when he was doing a YP meeting at our core that he did that song. I thought, well, I'm sure I could do an arrangement of this, and I did. There you go.
We were chatting about this recently. You have a, let's say, a dubious claim to fame in your published march, Whitley Witness.
Whitley Witness, yeah.
Why Whitley Witness, and why has it got a special place, if you want to say?
Okay, so as you know, I'm in Salvation Brass, and Johnny Searle was our flugel player from Boscombe. Yeah, well, he's from Boscombe now. Everybody knows Johnny Searle, really. And
yes.
one weekend we're away, he said, it'd be lovely if my dad's a band leader master there, so it's a small corps. Love it if you could write a piece for us. So I said, fine. I said, I'll do that. I think we agreed early on I'd do him a march. But what I then did was I got in touch with Mark, his dad, and said, it'd be great if your band could actually come up with some of the songs I want to use. And very strange, surprisingly, even though they're young, they came up with basically like flag-related songs. So the theme was all around the flag. So I think Yellow Star and Red and Blue, only one flag for me, reference to and lift up the banner. So that's where it came from. So I just wrote a march with that and used hooks of some and used the main melody of others. And that's why they were at Plymouth Whitley. I don't know if there's a very set way of saying it, but anyway, Plymouth Whitley Corps. That's why it's called Whitley Witness. I suggested some titles and they went with that one. And that, again, it's a lovely little march that turned out really well. It became all the more poignant when just after publication, Johnny's dad, Mark, sadly passed away way too soon. And so it's now sort of, for me, it's Mark's march. It's nice. He asked for, basically wanted it writing. So to do something for him, and the situation was sad, but whenever I hear that, I always think of Johnny's dad and the fact I was able to do that for him, which was again, quite an honour looking back now. I was happy with that.
I think it also has a unique place. It's the last published march to be able to use the core name in the title, isn't it?
That's the one, yeah. That is, as I said when we talked before, I'm hanging on to that. I don't get many other claims to fame.
Back to the day.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a shame really, because it's nice to be able to commemorate core and things in that way, but I know it's the reasons why, so it's fine. But it is one of my claims to one of my very few claims to fame. Another one was I think my very first piece that was ever published was Peter James and John for Male Voices, and that was the last ever edition of that particular the male voice.
You've got stuck. One. Okay. So what's new in the pipeline then, Ian? What's any compositions, any new ideas being banged out in the old brain?
I've not got a lot on, to be honest with you. At the moment, we talked about writer's block before. I'm struggling a little bit to, when I start stuff, it doesn't seem to come very well, or doesn't work very well, but I'll work through that. But there's a piece that's going to be published later this year, or, well, it's planned to be, but with coronavirus, it's coming in November this year. Whenever it actually comes out, we don't know. But that's a new piece which is based on I'm in His Hands. So that's the Phil Lager piece. Again, that came out in Sing to the Lord for the Songsters, and the second I sang it, I thought this is really lovely, and and I wanted to use it. So it's quite. I suppose what I've done with this one is try to keep things as very, very simple, because it's not the easiest tune to work with. It's syncopated, and I had struggle getting my songsters to sing it correctly, and similarly with bands. So what I've tried to do with the rest of the arrangement is to keep it as simple as possible. What I've done, I can actually use, I'm not a pianist, but I'll try and play for you what I've tried to do.
Lovely.
Is basically the introduction, the links between the piece, between the songs I've used, and the ending, are all basically based on 2 notes. What I try to do when I do any composition is look for something, look for hooks, look for anything within the music I'm using to develop the introduction, and look for ways to do that. So what I've done, if you know the song, basically,
I'm in His hands, whatever the future holds.
The viewers are dropping rapidly now from 6 down to 4, mate. But you've got the middle section. Okay, that's through the middle of it. Yeah, is where can't forget the words now. But anyway, that's it. For me. That's it. So throughout the whole piece, you've got these 2 notes basically. So what I've tried to do at the start is just use the same 2 notes. You can hear this. So it's. Something like that. And that's effectively what all it is. It's just based on 2 notes. And what I can do, though, is now play to you how that sounds. Obviously, it's not just 2 notes with the chording and everything that comes through with it, and how that's going to sound via Sibelius. But when you make that into the what it sounds like as a band piece, converts into the echo as well.
It's an interesting choice to use that tune, because a lot of people would go for the standard, the original. So that's really nice to hear that someone's actually using the modern version. I remember we had a Songs of Praise at Woodbridge some time ago, and one of the little old ladies said, "Can I please have I'm in His Hands?" And we were using the new songbook. I said, "Which version do you want?" It's nice to know that there are people out there who are using the is it Phil Lager?
Well, as I said, it was a Sing to the Lord arrangement that with Phil Lager's version that we used in songs that I wanted to use. However, one of the other things I tried to do is if I'm using a piece with the new arrangement, I tried to pull in the old one to it. So we've got the original in this song as well. And what I did in Reasons Why and what I've done here is overlap the 2 tunes for 8 bars at one point towards the end of the piece. So you hear both of them coming through. Again, that was quite a challenge, but it's worked out really well. But yeah, it's always good if you've got an original for me, if there's original song, is to draw a reference to it at some point throughout the piece. Because obviously
homage to
Yeah, that's it. And so, which one was it? Nothing But Thy Blood. Again, the middle section is the original. It is the original tune that they use. So, yeah. So no, nothing do I bring. It's the original. So again, it's trying to blend the new with the old, and it seems to work for me quite well. So that's one of my techniques. They might be nicking them now, aren't they?
Everyone says they nick off Bach, Beethoven, and
yeah, that's it. It's all there to be nicked. So that's coming out in November. So that would be nice. There's another one on the way. I now need to start writing a bit more to get back on the pipeline.
Oh, good. We'll have to. I'm sure you'll be bombarded with the reasons. Oh, I'd love a new one based on this. So, weirdest place that you've ever heard of your music being used or seen?
What was that? Sorry.
The weirdest place that you've ever heard of your music being performed?
Yeah, not so much weird. I mean, there was I wrote a little march called Countdown.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. And there's a band in Wollongong playing it as an outdoor tea party or something. That was quite interesting to see that being played. And again, when you're seeing a video of your music being played 12,000 miles away, it's a little bit surreal, but it's still lovely. And so it's probably one of the weirdest things. And some band played Great Big God, and they were kind of playing it on the back of looked like they're on the back of a truck playing it, and that was interesting.
Was it? That's just
no, they play my stuff with great dignity. I have to say that, because they're people they'll be watching. So
we talked about your mentors, musical heroes within the army. Not necessarily people who've been, encouraged you in the Kenneth Downey, Andrew Blythefield, but people that you just enjoy playing. I mean, whether they're no longer with us or whether they come out with a new piece. Oh, they're who springs to mind as someone you really enjoy listening to and playing yourself?
I was trying to think really. Eric Ball is huge in that sense.
Boy, it is going to be huge. It's magnificent. Yeah.
And my favourite songster piece is In the Secret of Thy Presence, and that's just an amazing song. So him and Albert Osborne teaming up to, this is dreamland in terms of songwriting. So, his music is awesome. Herbert Mountain was one as well that I liked. George Marshall one. I think for some of them it's the backstory that comes with them. I mean, I think if George Marshall was nearly killed in a mining accident and still was able to produce such wonderful music, and that. It says these people have gone before us. I mean, Ray Stadman, I met him. I was fortunate to meet him on my first trip to MMU to look at my music with Ken was his 80th birthday. And so I was able to share with him and just talk to him. And such a wonderful man. And what I find about, when we use the word great, I don't mean it in that adoration sort, but they're very good at what they do. They're phenomenal people. But what I love about the great composers is the ones I've met, they're very, very down to earth. They're very, very humble people, and they're never the big I am. Look at me, I'm brilliant. That turns me off people quite quickly when I start doing that. Almost like not knowing that they do it, but they do it, and they do it very well. So it's the humbleness of these people because of why they do it. And if you do it for God's glory, then it's a whole different ballgame to writing it for yourself. Glory.
Are they President's favourite songs to piece? Do you have a favourite band piece?
Ooh. Not really, to be fair. I'm not as much as a bando as you probably would think I am. I mean, there are classic pieces. There are classic pieces like, I could say Light of the World, which is phenomenal. One piece I really love, and what I like is I've used a little piece of it in Nothing But Thy Blood is a band piece called The Penitent, which is written in the 50s. And by Harry Kirk, that's it. And that used the original of Nothing But Thy Blood. So when I was researching the piece, again, looking for things that have gone before it, and there's one little phrase in there. Whenever I take this with Salvation Brass, that they'll know the bit I'm going to bet. But there's a little bit in The Penitent goes da 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 like that. And I've embedded that into Nothing But Thy Blood, and that's my reference to The Penitent, which was a lovely piece using that original melody. So that's it. There's loads of stuff out there. It's hard to pick an absolute favourite. Yeah, I just love music generally. So there you go.
And no,
And it depends on what mood I'm in as well.
yeah,
I mean, I can say
just make the cut.
my favourite march, for example, is I can say that's Motivation. Is it my favourite piece? Hard to say.
Passions outside of music. I mean, no one who knew me would know I would have any clue about sport or anything, but there's plenty of football fans out there that love to get wound up. But are you, do you have any other passions in your life apart from music in your family?
Yeah. Well, I suppose the main one now isn't that whilst I'm not doing much music, and now I'm off and furloughed and all that kind of stuff, is I know I do draw, and I do enjoy that, and seem to have been successful fairly. I had no idea I could draw till a couple of years ago. I had a break from work for a few months, which was nice, and I passed an art shop and bought some pencils and paper, and things have taken off since there. So yeah, it's quite nice to do.
What is your if you're not furloughed, what would you be doing on a weekday?
Oh, I'm a very interesting job. I'm a risk and compliance head of risk and compliance, risk manager. There you go. I'm a qualified accountant as well.
Oh, that helps.
But I haven't done that for a little while. Any what? Sorry.
Favorite Salvation Army song?
Oh, Boundless Salvation, probably without a doubt.
Really?
Yeah. But in the Secret Thy Presence as well, that's awesome as well. But yeah, I'm in His hands. Again, it's like choosing your favourite child. It's very difficult. But yeah. And, what's the Leslie Condon piece? Christ shall overcome the world. Is it Eternal?
Oh, that's Song of Praise.
Eternal God. That's a wonderful one.
I
should know these things better. Yeah. But with Christ has overcome the world at the end. When I say that with the sponsors,
that's just gold for me.
Awesome. Yeah. Another of my heroes, Leslie Condon as well.
Yes. I think you and Steve Cobb share a mutual interest in that one. But,
yeah.
My father often lives that he played E-flat bass next to Les, and I was only about 3 years old at the time, so I have no memory. Favourite scripture quote? Do you have a favourite scripture quote or quotes?
Yeah, I mean, one that's come, Psalm 91 is pretty much in He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High. That verse and that little passage. Again, the Songs of Peace and Under His Wings is based on that. And again, that gives me a lot of reassurance that God will protect us and will always provide shelter as well at any time. So when things are rocky in life, that is a really good Bible reading to come back to for me. It's the whole psalm is great, but the first 4 verses in particular, what I would come back to as my favourite again. So
something that reassures you by its presence being there.
Exactly, and at this time as well, when no one's overly certain about what tomorrow is going to be like, let alone and what announcements are going to be made and when we're going to be allowed out and when's life going to be normal again, I don't know. But to know that God has, He's looking out for us at all times, and He's not going to let us go under. He gave that promise with Noah with the rainbows, so He's not going to let things go that bad again. So it's just reassuring to have it.
Yeah. It's been absolutely brilliant talking to you and hearing your compositional techniques and your thinking and some of the stories behind the piece. Because as Bill Hines has famously said, every composer's piece of music has a story behind it. And I knew Whitney had a thing, but it was lovely to hear your story behind it.
If you want I can give you a very more of a funny of why something wrote. Blood of the Lamb, which was published 3 or 4 years ago now. It starts with this after you start with the tune slowly, then it goes that sort of piece. That came to me while I was in the shower. So I had to finish the shower quite quickly. The mental images people have got now, sorry if you're eating or anything. But I got out of the shower, dried off, come down, got dressed, come downstairs and wrote that down, and I had that hook and I didn't know what to do with it, and it kept leading to Blood of the Lamb. And I'm not a massive fan of Blood of the Lamb as a tune. It's all right, but it kept lending itself. And in the end, I had to give into it and wrote it with Blood of the Lamb. And then, it sort of worked really well. So, so that came to me in the shower. There you go. I didn't write it on the plane to the summer school or anything like that. so that it can come, inspiration can come at anywhere and any point. People can ask you for it, inspired by songsters in the shower, anything. And also, I use on my phone. You can record music. If you get an idea for anything, I tend to whistle it on there, and then if I'm out and about, I used to find I was thinking of a tune. By the time I got home, for example, if I've been at work, I'd forget it completely. So now I'll whistle on there. So there's loads of stuff on there that may or may not get used at some point in the future.
You don't wake up kicking and screaming in the middle of the night going, I've got to write that tune down.
Yeah, use the technology that's available at all times. I find it's very good for recording things and putting ideas down, or an introduction or example. Sometimes at songsters I get there early, and I get there to prepare, and when I've got a bit of time I'll set my piano, and sometimes something will come to me and I'll just record it on the phone so it's there, because sometimes you think, I'll remember that, and 10 minutes later you've completely forgotten what it was. So the mind is a strange thing in that sense, so record what you can when you can. Yeah, that's fine.
So yeah, I just wanted to sort of say thank you very much for your time.
My
we've
pleasure.
all been done free of charge. You've all volunteered.
I thought you were paying me.
And I haven't. This is going to be the first time I've done this, but I've been speaking to John and David and Dean. It's really put on my heart that it's an ongoing process, and you're doing this much as you can for the Lord. So I'm going to take this opportunity just to pray for you and your continued work and your music ability, as it is a gift from God. Lord, I do pray for my friend, for his compositional skills, for the spirit that you have embedded in him, the inspiration, the courage, the strength, and the ability to know right from wrong and to know your leading. And I just pray blessings and inspiration and that really powerful feel of the Holy Spirit on Ian as he walks his Christian life following your example, and that you will continue to be the inspiration that he needs, that you will be there when he gets the writer's block, that you will be there when he goes, hallelujah, that's worked, the sense of relief, the sense of, wow, somebody actually wants to play my music. You are in it all. We pray for the kids alive. You are a great big God. We are bound for glory in the blood of the Lamb. There are reasons why, that we see the love of God. We see the Feltwell spirit moving through his music, and we pray that that will evolve, will shoot through the atmosphere, and the whole world will get to know the musical talent more and more of Ian Feltwell, and that he will feel really blessed by those who want to continue to come and say, we like this, and he will feel your love and that sense of peace and commitment and sensitiveness that comes from serving you in this way. For the composing, for the inspiration, for the ability to put the notes on paper and make them work, and for people to be able to breathe life into these notes. We thank you, Lord. We pray for Ian, and we pray for all composers who are doing this, who encourage each other. For your sake, Lord, I pray, my blessing, the power of your love and your healing and holy hands on the love and wonderful composer that is Mr. Ian Feltwell. Amen.
Amen.
Okay.
Thank you.